She was 17, pregnant, and everyone told her to get rid of it. 3 months later, they found her body in a shallow grave. But the baby survived. I'm going to walk you through one of the most heartbreaking true crime cases you've never heard of, a story about choice, pressure, and the devastating consequences of secrets. For questions will haunt you throughout this case. Who pressured her to abort? How did the baby survive? What evidence finally cracked the case? Where are they now? This is the story of Melissa Chun and the phone call that changed everything. April 17th, 2019, 6:47 a.m. A jogger in the San Joaquin Wildlife Sanctuary, Orange County, California, noticed something odd near the trail marker at mile 3. Fresh dirt, recently disturbed earth, and what looked like fabric sticking out from the ground. The 911 call came in at 6:52 a.m. By 8:15, the Orange County Sheriff's Department had cordoned off a quarter-mile radius. By 9:30, cadaver dogs confirmed what investigators feared: a body. Female, partially buried, and according to the medical examiner who arrived on scene, she'd been pregnant. But here's where this case takes a turn that still haunts detectives to this day. Inside a duffel bag, buried 3 feet away, wrapped in a blood-stained towel, was a newborn baby. Alive, breathing, crying. Approximately 36 hours old. To understand what happened in that wildlife sanctuary, we need to go back 3 months earlier. Melissa Chun, 17 years old, junior at Riverside High School. On the surface, everything looked normal. Honor student, soccer player. But investigators would later discover that Melissa had been hiding something that would make her a target. In late January, Melissa confided in exactly one person about her pregnancy: her Aunt Patricia in Bakersfield. Not her mother, not her boyfriend, just Patricia. Why? Because Melissa had already made her decision, and she knew the reaction would be bad. March 12, 2019, Melissa finally tells her mother, Susan. The clinic appointment was scheduled within 24 hours. Planned Parenthood on Harbor Boulevard. Tuesday afternoon. Melissa never went. According to phone records, that same evening, Melissa received 47 text messages, 17 phone calls, all from the same number, her stepfather, Robert Martinez. She didn't answer a single one. Tyler Davidson, the baby's father, sent one text that week: "This ruins everything. Fix it." But Melissa didn't respond. Instead, she ordered prenatal vitamins on Amazon, joined an online forum for teen mothers, started researching Medicaid enrollment. Her friends at school later told investigators that Melissa seemed different those last few weeks. Distracted, constantly checking her phone, looking over her shoulder in hallways. One friend, Jennifer Rodriguez, remember Melissa saying something strange during lunch on April 10th. 1 week before her body was found, if something happens to me, it wasn't an accident. Jennifer didn't think much of it at the time, thought Melissa was being dramatic, stressed about the pregnancy. But those 7 words would haunt her forever, because 5 days later, Melissa stopped showing up to school. April 15th, Monday morning, 7:45 a.m. Melissa wasn't in homeroom. Her mother, Susan, called the attendance office and said Melissa had a doctor's appointment, routine prenatal checkup, but there was no appointment. Security footage from a 7-Eleven on Chapman Avenue shows Melissa at 11:23 a.m. that same day. She bought a Gatorade and a bag of Cheetos. She was alone. She looked at her phone constantly, like she was waiting for someone. At 2:17 p.m., Melissa's phone pinged off a cell tower near the intersection of Jamboree Road and Interstate 405. That location is approximately 12 miles from her house and 4 miles from the San Joaquin Wildlife Sanctuary. After that ping, nothing. Her phone went dark. No calls, no texts, no activity. Melissa Chun vanished. Her mother reported her missing 36 hours later. Wednesday morning, April 17th. By the time that report was filed, joggers were already calling 911 about disturbed earth on a hiking trail. And buried in that earth was Melissa and her baby, one dead, one clinging to life. Have you ever had to make a choice everyone disagreed with? A decision that turned your world upside down? Drop your story below. because what investigators discovered next would reveal just how dangerous Melissa's decision really was. April 17th, 2019. 9:47 a.m. The Orange County Coroner's Office confirms what everyone feared. The body in the shallow grave was Melissa Chun. But the condition of her remains told a story that made even seasoned homicide detectives stop in their tracks. Melissa had been buried approximately 48 to 72 hours before discovery. Her body showed signs of recent childbirth. The medical examiner confirmed she'd given birth within hours of her death, but here's what didn't make sense: there were no defensive wounds. No signs of struggle. No ligature marks. No blunt force trauma to the head. The preliminary cause of death was listed as acute hemorrhage. Postpartum bleeding. The kind that happens when a mother gives birth without medical assistance and doesn't receive proper care afterward. In other words, Melissa bled out. Slowly. Over hours. But investigators found something that changed everything. Soil samples taken from beneath her body contained traces of motor oil, brake fluid, and fragments of automotive carpet fiber. Melissa hadn't given birth where she was buried. She'd given birth somewhere else. Somewhere with a concrete floor, a garage, or a workshop. And then someone moved her 3 feet from Melissa's body. Investigators found a black Nike duffel bag. Inside that bag, wrapped in a blood-soaked beach towel with cartoon dolphins on it, was a baby girl. 5 pounds, 3 ounces, approximately 36 to 40 hours old. She was alive. Paramedics rushed her to Children's Hospital of Orange County. She was hypothermic. Body temperature had dropped to 94 degrees. She was dehydrated, jaundiced, but her vitals were stable. The neonatologist on duty, Dr. Sarah Patel, later testified that the baby's survival was nothing short of extraordinary. How did she survive? The duffel bag had been zipped shut, but not completely. A 2-inch gap at the top allowed just enough airflow. The towel, despite being soaked with blood, provided minimal insulation. And the bag itself had been placed in a shaded area, protected from direct sunlight. But here's the detail that stopped investigators cold. Inside the duffel bag, underneath the baby, was a hospital-grade umbilical cord clamp. The plastic kind used in delivery rooms. Not the kind you can buy at CVS. The kind that comes from a medical facility. Someone with medical knowledge had delivered that baby, cut the cord properly, clamped it, and then put the baby in a bag and buried her next to her dead mother. The question became, was this person trying to save the baby or hide her? Child Protective Services immediately took custody. The baby, who the hospital staff nicknamed Hope, was placed in emergency foster care while investigators worked to identify next of kin. Melissa's Aunt Patricia, the one person Melissa had confided in, immediately filed for custody. But that process would take weeks, and investigators had a more pressing question: who put that baby in the ground? Within 24 hours of identifying Melissa's body, detectives had 3 persons of interest. Suspect number 1, Tyler Davidson, the baby's father, 18 years old, the last person to send Melissa a text message telling her to fix it. Tyler was brought in for questioning on April 18th. His alibi? He was at baseball practice on April 15th from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. His coach confirmed it. 12 teammates confirmed it. Security footage from the school showed Tyler leaving the parking lot at 6:23 p.m. His phone record showed he was home by 6:45 p.m. He ordered Pizza Hut online at 7:12 p.m. Delivery driver confirmed the address and time. Tyler's alibi was airtight, but investigators weren't ready to clear him completely. Suspect number 2, Susan Chun, Melissa's mother, the woman who scheduled the abortion appointment. The woman who, according to neighbors, had been heard screaming at Melissa through closed windows. Susan was interviewed on April 18th. She was hysterical, cooperative. She provided her work schedule immediately. She was a nurse at Hope Memorial Hospital in Newport Beach. She worked the overnight shift April 14th through April 16th, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Hospital security badges don't lie. Susan had clocked in and clocked out. She'd been at work when Melissa disappeared, when Melissa gave birth, when Melissa died. But then detectives noticed something in Susan's interview transcript. She never asked about the baby. Not once during a 90-minute interview did Susan Chin ask if her grandchild had survived. Didn't ask if it was a boy or girl. Didn't ask where the baby was. Either she already knew or she didn't care. Suspect number 3, Robert Martinez, Melissa's stepfather. The man who called her 47 times the night she refused the abortion. Robert was the one who interested investigators most. Robert worked construction. He owned a Ford F-150. He had access to garages, workshops, job sites with concrete floors. And he had no alibi for April 15th. Robert claimed he'd been working a solo job that Monday, renovating a kitchen in a house in Anaheim Hills. The homeowners were out of town. He was there alone. No witnesses, no security cameras, just his word. Detectives asked for the address. Robert provided it. They went to check. The homeowners confirmed Robert had been working on their kitchen, but they couldn't confirm what day. Could have been Monday. Could have been Tuesday. They weren't their dead end. But then forensics came back with results that cracked the case wide open. April 22nd, 2019, 5 days after Melissa's body was found, the Orange County Crime Lab processed the evidence collected from the burial site. The automotive carpet fibers found beneath Melissa's body were sent for analysis. The results came back with a matched 2006 Ford F-150. Factory-installed gray carpet. Same make and model as Robert Martinez's truck. But that wasn't the smoking gun. Thousands of people in Orange County drove that truck. The fiber evidence was circumstantial at best. What broke the case was something far more damning. Investigators obtained a warrant to search Robert's truck. On April 23rd, they towed it from the driveway on Maple Drive. Neighbors watched through windows as the flatbed hauled it away. In the truck bed, beneath a layer of construction debris and old tarps, luminol revealed traces of blood. Lots of it. Consistent with a recent cleaning attempt, DNA testing confirmed it was Melissa's blood. But here's the detail that sealed Robert's fate. Tucked behind the driver's seat, wedged into the gap between the seat and center console, investigators found a hospital bracelet. The bracelet had been issued by Hoag Memorial Hospital, the same hospital where Susan Chun worked as a nurse. But Melissa never went to that hospital. She never checked in, never gave birth there. Someone had stolen that bracelet from the maternity ward. Someone with access. Detectives pulled security footage from Hoag Memorial for April 15th. At 10:32 p.m., Susan Chun, who was supposed to be working the overnight shift in the ICU, was seen on camera entering the maternity ward supply room. She stayed inside for 4 minutes. When she left, she was holding something small, something that fit in her palm. Susan Chun had given Robert the bracelet, but why would a mother help her husband cover up her daughter's death? The answer would come from the most unlikely source, and it would reveal a secret that no one saw coming. April 25th, 2019, 3:47 p.m. Detective Marcus Webb received a phone call that would break the case wide open. The caller was Tyler Davidson, the baby's father, and he was ready to talk. But what Tyler revealed wasn't what anyone expected. Tyler sat down across from Detective Webb and said 5 words that changed everything. Robert Martinez isn't Melissa's stepfather. Tyler explained that 3 weeks before Melissa disappeared, she'd confided something to him. Something she discovered by accident when looking for a birth certificate to apply for a driver's permit. Robert Martinez was listed on that birth certificate as her biological father. Susan Chun had lied for 13 years. Robert hadn't entered Melissa's life when she was 9. He'd been there since the beginning. He'd left when Melissa was 4, but it wasn't abandonment. Susan had kicked him out after discovering he'd been arrested for domestic violence against a previous girlfriend. Years later, they'd reconnected. Susan allowed him back into their lives, but they both agreed to tell Melissa he was her stepfather. They thought it would be easier, less complicated. Melissa discovered the truth in March. The same month, she found out she was pregnant. According to Tyler, Melissa confronted Robert on March 28th. She was furious. She felt betrayed, and she told Robert something that would seal her fate. "I'm keeping my baby, and I'm going to be a better parent than you ever were." That night, Robert called Susan at the hospital. The call lasted 17 minutes. Phone records confirmed it. Whatever they discussed during that call, it set a plan in motion. April 26, 2019. 6:15 a.m. Robert Martinez was arrested at his home and charged with murder. He refused to speak without an attorney. At 9:30 a.m. that same morning, Susan Shun was arrested at Hoag Memorial Hospital. She was escorted out in handcuffs while her co-workers watched. Both were charged with first-degree murder, child endangerment, and conspiracy to commit murder. But the motive went deeper than anyone imagined. Robert's construction business had been failing for 2 years. They were 3 months behind on their mortgage. Credit cards maxed out. Medical bills from Susan's mother's cancer treatment had bankrupted them. And then there was the life insurance policy. In February 2019, 1 month before Melissa discovered she was pregnant, Susan had taken out a $250,000 life insurance policy on Melissa. The beneficiaries, Susan Shun and Robert Martinez. When Melissa refused the abortion, when she decided to keep the baby, Susan and Robert saw their financial problems getting worse, not better. Another mouth to feed. Daycare costs, medical expenses. But if Melissa died, they'd get $250,000. The pregnancy gave them the perfect cover. Make it look like a tragic accident. A teen mother who gave birth alone and bled out. It happens. No one would question it. Except they didn't count on the baby surviving. On April 15, 2019, Robert told Melissa he wanted to apologize. He asked her to meet him at a rental property he was working on in Anaheim Hills. A house with an empty garage. No neighbors close enough to hear anything. Melissa agreed. The 7-Eleven security footage shows her waiting for someone at 11:23 a.m. That someone was Robert. Robert picked her up, drove her to the property. And according to cell tower data, Melissa's phone pinged near that location at 2:17 p.m. That was the last ping before her phone was destroyed inside that garage. Robert induced labor. Investigators believe he used misoprostol, a medication that triggers uterine contractions. The same medication used in medical abortions. How did he get it? Susan. She had access to the hospital pharmacy. Melissa gave birth on the concrete floor of that garage around 7 p.m. The baby was born alive. Robert clamped the umbilical cord using supplies Susan had stolen from the hospital. But instead of calling 911, instead of getting Melissa medical attention, Robert watched her bleed. For hours. Melissa bled to death sometime between 10 p.m. and midnight on April 15th. Robert wrapped her body in a tarp from his truck. He placed the baby, alive, into a duffel bag, and he drove to the San Joaquin Wildlife Sanctuary. Why bring the baby? Investigators believe Robert panicked. He didn't know what to do with a newborn. He couldn't take the baby home, couldn't leave it at a fire station without raising questions. So he made a choice that still baffles psychologists and detectives. He buried the baby with her mother. Alive, the 2-inch gap in the duffel bag zipper? Investigators believe it was intentional. Robert left just enough air, just enough of a chance. Maybe he couldn't bring himself to suffocate a baby. Maybe he thought nature would do the work for him. Maybe, in some twisted way, he thought he was giving the baby a fighting chance. We'll never know for sure. Robert Martinez never confessed. He maintained his innocence even after his arrest. But Susan Shun broke. On May 3, 2019, after 2 weeks in county jail, Susan requested to speak with prosecutors. She agreed to testify against Robert in exchange for a reduced sentence. Susan's testimony revealed the full timeline of the conspiracy. According to Susan, the plan was Robert's idea. After the phone call on March 28th, the night Melissa confronted him, Robert told Susan they needed to handle this before the baby was born. Susan initially resisted, but Robert convinced her. He reminded her of their debt, the foreclosure notice, the fact that Melissa ruined her life by keeping the baby. Susan admitted to stealing the medical supplies, the umbilical clamp, the misoprostol, even the hospital bracelet, which Robert had asked for just in case they needed to claim the baby was born in a hospital. She admitted to lying about Melissa having a doctor's appointment on April 15th. She knew exactly where Melissa was. She knew what Robert was doing. And she did nothing. Text messages recovered from Susan's phone, sent while she was at work on April 15th, show the cold calculation of her involvement. 7:43 p.m. Susan to Robert. Is it done? 8:21 p.m. Robert to Susan. Baby came. Still waiting. 11:07 p.m. Susan to Robert. Question mark. 11:34 p.m. Robert to Susan. It's over. Going to the spot now. Susan knew Melissa was dying, and she told Robert to wait. To let her bleed out, Robert's defense tried to paint Susan as the mastermind. They claimed Robert was coerced, that Susan manipulated him. But physical evidence told a different story. DNA evidence proved Robert was the only person in that garage with Melissa. His fingerprints were on the misoprostol bottle. His boot prints matched impressions in the dirt at the burial site. Susan's DNA was never found at the scene. She was at work the entire time. Her role was procurement and cover-up, not execution. The prosecution argued that both were equally guilty. One provided the means. One carried out the act. Both let Melissa die. The jury agreed. Here's how the final 48 hours of Melissa Chen's life unfolded. April 15, 2019. 11:23 a.m. Melissa meets Robert at 7-11:11:45 a.m. They arrive at rental property in Anaheim Hills 2:00 p.m. Robert administers misoprostol 3:30 p.m. Melissa's labor begins 7:14 p.m. Baby is born 7:20 p.m. Robert clamps umbilical cord. Places baby in duffel bag 7:30 p.m. 11 p.m. Robert watches Melissa bleed. Does not call for help 11:34 p.m. Melissa dies from hemorrhagic shock 11:45 p.m. Robert loads body and baby in a truck 12:30 a.m. April 16th. Robert buries both at San Joaquin Wildlife Sanctuary. April 16th. Robert returns home, cleans truck bed, Susan covers for him, creates false timeline. April 17th. 6:47 a.m. Jogger discovers burial site. 9:30 a.m. Baby found alive 10:15 a.m. Melissa's body officially identified. The evidence that ultimately convicted Robert Martinez and Susan Chen came down to three critical pieces. 1. The hospital bracelet found in Robert's truck, linking Susan directly to the cover-up. 2. The text messages between Susan and Robert during the time Melissa was dying, proving conspiracy and premeditation. 3. Forensic analysis of the burial site, which revealed Robert had researched how long can a newborn survive without food on his phone 2 days before Melissa's death. He'd planned for the baby to die in that grave, but the baby didn't die. She survived. And because she survived, investigators had a living witness to the crime. Her very existence proved that Melissa had given birth, that someone had helped deliver her, that someone had made a conscious choice to bury her alive. That baby, later named Hope by the hospital staff, was the key to solving her mother's murder. Justice or injustice? A mother and father who conspired to kill their daughter for insurance money. One got a plea deal. One will spend life in prison. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Should Susan have gotten a lighter sentence for testifying, or should both have faced the same punishment? The trial of Robert Martinez began on September 9, 2019, 5 months after Melissa's death. Robert faced charges of first-degree murder, child endangerment, and conspiracy. If convicted on all counts, he'd face life in prison without the possibility of parole. The prosecution's case was methodical. They presented the forensic evidence, the blood in the truck, the carpet fibers, the phone records. They displayed the text messages between Robert and Susan. And they brought in the medical examiner who testified that Melissa could have survived if she'd received medical attention within the first 2 hours of hemorrhaging. Robert had let her die on purpose. The defense argued that Robert panicked, that he didn't understand the severity of Melissa's condition, that he never intended for her to die. They painted him as a man who made terrible decisions under pressure, not a calculated killer. But Susan Chen's testimony destroyed that narrative. Susan took the stand on September 23rd. She testified for 6 hours over 2 days. She detailed every conversation, every text message, every moment of the conspiracy. She admitted her role, and she confirmed that Robert had planned Melissa's death weeks in advance. The most damning moment came when the prosecution asked Susan a simple question. Did Robert ever call 911? Susan's answer, no. He told me not to worry. He said it would look like an accident. Just a girl who gave birth alone and didn't make it. The courtroom went silent October 4th, 2019. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Guilty on all counts. Robert Martinez showed no emotion as the verdict was read. He stared straight ahead, didn't flinch, didn't react. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. October 18th. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. Susan Chun, as part of her plea agreement, received 15 years to life with the possibility of parole. She'd be eligible for parole in 2034. Melissa's aunt, Patricia Chun, gave a victim impact statement that left the courtroom in tears. Melissa was 17 years old. She wanted to be a mother. She wanted to give her baby a chance at life. And her own parents took that away from her. They took everything away from her. For money. Public response was swift and brutal. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse demanding that Susan's sentence be increased. Online petitions circulated calling for charges of capital murder, which would have made both defendants eligible for the death penalty in California, but the death penalty never came. The case moved forward, and Melissa's family was left to pick up the pieces. Robert Martinez is currently incarcerated at California State Prison, Corcoran. Inmate number C899472. He'll die behind bars. He's filed multiple appeals. All have been denied. In 2022, he gave one prison interview where he maintained his innocence, claiming Susan manipulated him. No one believed him. Susan Chun is serving her sentence at the California Institution for Women in Corona. She's participated in therapy programs and has expressed remorse in parole hearing prep documents. But she won't be eligible for parole until 2034. She'll be 61 years old, and the baby, Hope, was adopted. Patricia Chun fought for custody immediately after Melissa's death, but the court determined that a closed adoption would be in the child's best interest. In August 2019, Hope was placed with a family outside of California. Her identity and location are sealed. She's now 5 years old, healthy, thriving, and she'll never know that her first 36 hours on Earth were spent buried next to her mother. Patricia honors Melissa's memory by respecting that decision, though she said publicly that not a day goes by where she doesn't think about her great niece. The most important lesson from Melissa's case is this: the systemic failure to protect vulnerable young people. Melissa told a friend she feared for her life. That friend didn't report it. Teachers noticed Melissa seemed withdrawn, but didn't intervene. The system failed her. Melissa's case exposed the gap between recognizing danger and acting on it. It revealed how financial desperation can turn parents into predators. And it showed that even in the safest neighborhoods, behind closed doors, unimaginable cruelty can exist. Melissa wanted one thing: to be a mother, to give her baby a chance. She never got that chance. But her baby did, and that baby is alive today because of one thing: a 2-inch gap in a zipper. An act of mercy or an act of cowardice, we'll never truly know. But Hope survived, and in surviving, she gave investigators the key to justice. What drives parents to kill their own child? In Robert and Susan's case, it wasn't rage. It wasn't a moment of passion. It was cold calculation, financial desperation mixed with resentment. They saw Melissa's pregnancy and Melissa herself as an obstacle to their survival. Psychologists call this instrumental violence. Violence with a purpose. Violence as a solution to a problem. She told a friend, "If something happens to me, it wasn't an accident." That friend didn't report it. Teachers noticed she seemed withdrawn. No one intervened. Melissa was isolating, and no one reached out. Melissa's story isn't unique. Homicide is the leading cause of death among pregnant women in the United States. According to the CDC, pregnant and postpartum women are twice as likely to die from homicide than from pregnancy-related causes. Most of these murders are committed by intimate partners or family members. Melissa Chun was 17 years old. She made a choice to give life, and that choice cost her everything. Her parents, driven by greed and desperation, took her life and tried to erase her baby's existence. But justice prevailed. Robert Martinez will die in prison. Susan Chun lost everything. And Hope, the baby who survived 36 hours buried alive, is now 5 years old. Loved, safe, alive. Melissa never got to hold her daughter. But her courage, her refusal to give up on her baby, saved that child's life. She is not forgotten. If this story affected you, take a moment to leave a comment remembering Melissa Chun. Share your thoughts, honor her memory, and kindly subscribe as we bring you more crime stories.